What's up, people? I'm Shaggy the Opinionated Hippie, and this is part 20 of my ranking and reviewing King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard studio albums in order. This is their 20th album, hence it's part 20. The album being, I'm going to mispronounce this, Omnium Gatherum. Omnium Gatherum. It is their 20th. It is their first double album, which, thinking back on them, like, yes, obviously they didn't release a double album, but a couple of them were kind of long, right? And maybe in the before times, you know, a 70-minute album, that's 17 and a half minute sides. That's a double album back in the old days. So I was surprised that it was a double album. Like, I knew it, but it was like, oh, wow. Of all the things they've done as a band in their previous 19 albums, not to release a double album, they're not going the path of most bands. Also, it was released in April of 2022, and so I believe it was recorded probably in 2021. I believe it is the first time they were actually physically together as a band to record since the pandemic. A lot of that other stuff had been file sharing and doing things on their own and, you know, doing things in separate locations. So it kind of makes sense that it's a double album. It really is, in many ways, like a celebration of them, like, they're back together as a band. They're playing in person. And musically, it touches on so many of the other sort of subgenres, I guess, that they sort of dabbled with. You get some jazzy stuff. You get some thrash metal-y stuff. You get like a straight up 20-minute King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard hyperkinetic attack jam. Like their signature sort of jam, like a 20-minute version of that to kick things off. You get an actual real slow jam that is really good. Get a lot of psych pop. You get everything, like almost a sampling of everything King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard have done previously to this. Doesn't feel like a sampler disc. You know, it doesn't feel like, oh, these jarringly different genres are all on one CD. It flows together. The sequencing, especially the first half of the album, is almost perfect. The first two sides of this album, I think, are almost perfect. If this had only been a single album and the first half of it maybe was Omnium Gatherum Part 1 and the second half was a different album, the first half of this album is going to rank up there as maybe number 1, maybe number 2. The addition of the second half, which I'll talk about more later, drops at a couple spots. But the first half is so incredibly strong and so incredibly good. But you really do get so many different flavors. And they almost in a way of like, they're pretty distinct, because anytime you go from like a slow jam to thrash, that's a pretty jarring sort of like switch. But it's not like you're going from eating apples to having like a croissant, right? Weird pairing. But it reminds me of, like, I know we have them here in the States. I'm assuming they exist elsewhere. Those sort of bags of chips in which you would buy like the rectangle case, and there's like 16 different bags, and there's like a couple Doritos, like a blue Doritos, a red Doritos. There's like a sour cream and onion. There's a barbecue chip. There's a plain chip. There's maybe a Cheetos or a Funyuns. Like, that is what this album is. Like, they're all chips, you know, and you're not really going to be all that like blown out of your mind if you go from like Doritos to Lay's, but they're all pretty different. And you do recognize that, oh yeah, I'm getting a lot of different stuff here. So it's a long album. It's their first double. We got a total of 16 songs, but the first song, ostensibly the first side of music, is The Dripping Tap, which is an 18-minute, just full-on pedal to the metal, ferocious, absolute, just blistering King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard psych jam. It starts off with this slower, kind of old school KG type melody, something that you might hear on like Float On or an earlier album, that kind of weird psych muted pop. But then we just go into the full attack. The beat drops and we're just off. The 18 minutes, the melody kind of returns in the middle where they bring it back down again. Like, we're out of the jam, we're going to go back to that opening melody, but then immediately we're back into the attack again. Pretty much a straightforward, very hypnotic, a lot of repetition. But again, there's all this, so much going on musically that there's always different instruments you can kind of latch onto and make that ride, that exhilarating ride with. But then when it wraps up at the end, that opening intro, that melody, it's there, but it's overlaid among the upbeat drive. So the two kind of fuse together at the end. It's absolutely beautiful. A fantastic way to open an album. Exhilarating. Like, this could be just an EP. Let's just drop the dripping tap. I'm listening to this over and over again. But then the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 songs are all presenting us like a different bag of chips, a different flavor, and they're all delicious. Magenta Mountain, kind of a bouncy, almost MGMT type psych thing. Maybe a little Flaming Lips type, their symphonic period, a little maybe that Flaming Lips type psych, bouncy, big vibe. Kepler-22b, kind of slightly jazzy, a little more light pop psych. It's about looking out through a telescope and seeing a telescope looking back at you. Gaia is metal, killer opening riff. Not full thrash, but we got some thrash. We got that Hetfield voice coming back in. Really good, like Infest the Nest, Rat's Nest, Murder the Universe type vibes. Really, really aggressive song. Amber Grease is slow jam, man. Really nice, super smooth bass playing, kind of like G-Funk meets P-Funk. You know, you got some funky bass, you got some Bernie Worrell sort of keyboards floating in there. Really nice, kind of smoky, sultry late night vibe. And then that goes into the bag of chips that you've never had from King Gizzard before. Like you buy this bag of chips, you're like, oh yeah, I've had Doritos and Lay's and Cheetos and all that, but oh, what's that bag? I've never had that flavor with this bag, because in Sadie Sorceress, and later again, I believe in the Grim Reaper is the song that it's in, we get some rap. We get a flow. We get somebody dropping bars. Musically, kind of reminds me of like the Beastie Boys live band period, when it's just this really loudly mic'd in the red, just rock and roll, that they're just kind of, rock grooves that they're laying beats over. It has that vibe. The lyrics are really cool, kind of weird. The music, I think, works. The flow is nowhere near as good as anything the Beastie Boys would drop, but it's, despite the early, like, oh, are they really going here? By the end of it, I'm like, yeah, they went there. And it's kind of good, surprisingly. And the album kind of peaks right there. And I think that is the first like half of the album. I think on the vinyl, it is side 1 is Dripping Tap, side 2 is 2 through 6, and then the second half starts with Evilest Man. And I believe that's the case. And Evilest Man feels like a reset. It feels like we're going back to some like more traditional kind of heavy feeling, but some like psych pop type vibes. We're just kind of like, yeah, we're resetting. There's also Evilest Man has might be about Fox News and Murdoch. It says Murdochian. It talks about misinformation that's fogging somebody's brain. Really nice keyboards throughout this entire thing. But from here on out, the rest of the album, we get another return to rap with the Grim Reaper, which has some weirdly eerie like flute in it. Doesn't quite have the same Beastie Boys vibe, but it also kind of works. But then we also get some weird psych pop. We get some more sort of traditional songs throughout here. We get some big sounding psych pop. We get what I think is the worst song on the album. What is it? Persistence, which is just kind of a calmer, more like rhythm guitar is kind of nice in it, but it's just one of those songs that just, after everything that's preceded it, it's like the fourth song on side 3, just doesn't quite have the energy. Like, we're lagging a little bit here. We're like, okay, this one maybe could have been left off the album. What else do we got? Predator X has a nice, really nice heavy drums to start off, and almost like a big bottom, like metal psych. This is the metal song on the second side, Predator X. We get more of that. We get a song called Candles, which is without a doubt the most, kind of sounds like candles. It's like what you're going to feel like when you're in a room full of candles. It sounds like maybe the song could have been played while Andy Summers was dancing around barefoot among a room full of candles playing guitar. It's that kind of thing. The final track, The Funeral, has a ticking clock in it. I think referencing the previous album, Made in Timeland. We get a little conceptual continuity coming in there. Kind of a reflective, somber, but not too like depressing type closing song for something called The Funeral. But the second half of the album, like the last 10 songs, I just don't think hold up to the genius and sort of we're back, like just the sequencing on the first half of the album. Every song is bringing something completely different to the table, and it's of a really high quality. And I think on the second side, we get songs that just, we're kind of repeating the same ideas. We're kind of just in this psych. We got some short little jams every once in a while. We got a lot of psych energy. But I just don't think there's really a standout track on the second side. Like the Grim Reaper, this rap version, the one that's on the second half, is not as good as the rap song on the first half. Predator X, I think this metal song on this half is not as good as the metal song on the first half. I enjoy them both, but I think if this was a single album, it's going to rank much higher on my list, even though it's still pretty high on my list because the first half of it is so fantastic. But yeah, I really, really like this album. I'm just trying to for me, by the time we get to song 7, which is like the start of the second half of the album, I'm already sold on this album. I'm all in. I love it. And while I do think the second half doesn't live up to the just spectacular 7-song opening, 6 songs that open it, it's not bad enough to drop it where I don't want to listen to this. It's still a really good listen. It's just one of those where circumstances, COVID happened, and you never drop a double album, you're back together. Yeah, you're having fun playing music. I'm going to give you I'm letting you have that moment. Where would I rank this among the other 20 that I've done so far? I have it at number 6, mainly because of those first 6 songs. The Dripping Tap, if this was an EP with the Dripping Tap, this might be at number 4 or number 3, probably number 4. That is how much I absolutely love the Dripping Tap. And it's 20 minutes long, so that goes a long way to filling out the report card. That's 25% of this album. You give that a 10, it's going to get hard. And then you put the second side to 10, we already have a perfect score going into the halfway, so that's it. That's my rationale. But yeah, I drop it at number 6. It's just a fantastic listen, and it really is. You're maybe stuffed at the end of it, and at the end of it, you're like, man, maybe I shouldn't have eaten all those chips, but you probably enjoyed every single bag while you're eating them. You might have liked the Funyuns more than you like the blue bag of Doritos, but hey, you also like the blue bag of Doritos. This band is amazing. I'm looking at this list, that is no longer on your screen, 20 albums, and all of them are worth checking out at least once, because it might not be my thing, the ones at the bottom, but it might be your thing, because none of them are bad. This band is just ridiculous. But yeah, that's all I got for their double album. I've talked longer on shorter albums, but it really is. I really think the second half of this album just, it lacks a track or two to just maybe drop couple tracks, some of the weaker tracks, and maybe jam out a couple of the stronger tracks, make that metal track maybe a little more epic, maybe raise this thing up a little. There's a jam, I think, in, maybe it's not in Persistence, but it's in another one of those P songs that's on here. You maybe stretch out Presumptuous, I think has a little bit of a jam in it. Stretch out that jam a little more. Maybe this album's a little bit better. But yeah, still a fantastic album. It's at number 6, and these are ridiculous. And yeah, all right, but that's what I got. I'm done ranting about this. I highly recommend this album. If you're not sold by the end of the Dripping Tap, then I don't know why you're listening to King Gizzard anyways. It's are you a Lee Marvin? I'm a Lee Marvin fan. You a Lee Marvin fan? Yeah, I love that song. All right, that's all I got. Thanks for listening to me ramble about King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, and I highly recommend you check this band out because they are amazing. Thanks for watching. Peace. I'll talk to you later.